Okay, so we have all heard the saying, the greater the opposition, the greater the blessing. Like, we have all heard that. And I feel like everybody has experienced those moments in their life. But, I was doing some research this week, and something that I found super interesting was that it said the properties of every positive charge are the opposite of a negative charge. Positive charges are a surplus of protons or a deficiency of electrons that repel the other charges while attracting negative charges. And I just thought that was so crazy because I feel like you are going to definitely be met with some type of opposition, with some type of spiritual warfare when you are climbing to that next level and that next season in your life. And what I thought was so interesting was that every positive charge, they are attracting negative charges, even in a scientific sense. And I just thought about that from a really cool perspective of like, yeah, I could see that every single time I was about to really reach a new pinnacle in my life or do something different, I was faced with a lot of opposition. And I started to really sit back and realize, anything something positive is happening, it feels like something negative is coming in. And I felt like for a long time I was like reaching ceiling after ceiling in my life. Like it would be like no matter how hard I grinded, no matter how much I was doing, boom, there's a ceiling. Boom, there's something else. I make this amount of money, something comes and it's destructive, and now I have to pay for it. And it felt like for years, probably up until the last year or two, that was just the repeating cycle, and I couldn't really understand it. And I think something that I want to acknowledge is that we know opposition will occur in our lives, right? We do know that, but we know that sometimes that opposition is a result of our own decisions and our own free will. And on the other side of that, and the flip of that, is that sometimes there is just going to be that natural opposition that is opposing us when we are raising to a new level, and you are going to be dealing with spiritual warfare or things of that nature. But I think it's really important to have the ability to identify what side of the coin you're on, right? Like, am I causing this opposition in my life, or is this something that is naturally going to occur because I am just progressing and I know that there's always going to be resistance from the enemy in this space in my life, And so I have two really good examples that I wanted to kind of like highlight when it comes to that. But like being out of alignment with God's will for our lives naturally creates opposition, right? Like you have no business doing certain things. You have no grace. You have no covering. You're opening doors to things that just you don't have no business with. You're in a relationship that God didn't call you to be in. And now you're facing all this warfare in your life. Like, yeah, you wasn't assigned to that. You're working a job that does not fulfill you and you're stressed every day because you're out of your purpose and your alignment. Yeah, you wasn't supposed to be in that spot, And I don't think that God can't use those moments in our life to really like help us learn lessons. But I do think I started to realize there were definitely things that I was doing that was causing a certain level of opposition to occur in my life because I was not in alignment. I was out of alignment. And one of the big realizations was I didn't even know I was out of alignment. I didn't even have the consciousness or the mind at that point to really realize that, you know what I mean? Like I'm out of alignment in this moment, right? So a really good example of this is, right, like, so I'm smoking weed for 10 years. What did that open up a door to? That opened up a door to me having a lot of resistance. The first resistance is I could never dream when I was smoking. And the way God communicates with me all the time now is through dreams. So I am opening a natural door to being able to not hear clearly from God. Then in turn, I'm not able to operate and move a certain type of way strategically because I have literally opened up a gate, opened up access to things that he didn't really have in his plans for me, in his will or his alignment, And I think that a lot of times we are in bondage to things that we have put ourselves in situations to be in bondage to. And then we're like, yo, like I'm facing so much opposition, like bad thing after bad thing is happening to me, but we're not taking the time to sit back and really realize or self-evaluate and say, hey, what are the areas in my life that I'm actually causing this opposition and this friction to occur? And, I think that when you're not doing God's will and when you're out of alignment with your life, it will create those moments where you are putting yourself in certain situations and certain predicaments that you don't got no business in. You don't got no business in that environment. You don't have any business in certain things. We'll leave it there because we all done been in them. But it takes that like accountability to sit in that moment and say, I may be the cause for some of these things that are not necessarily on trajectory in my life. But the flip of that, and I always think this is so crazy because when I first started reading the Bible and when I first started like, deepening my relationship and really starting to really self-evaluate at a certain point, one of the first stories that I ever read was the story of Job. And I feel like the flip of that is there are so many times and moments in our lives where we are truly trying our best. We are stepping into God's alignment. We are doing everything that he's called us to do, but we feel like we're not seeing the results that we are expecting or the things that we want. And I think that Job 6:12 through 13, and then Job 6:24, you guys can look into those verses. But I really, really love those verses because it's kind of like those moments where Job is really questioning like God, and he's like, well, what did I do to really deserve or put myself in this predicament? And sometimes we don't do anything to put ourselves in that predicament, but God uses those moments to really purify us, to test us and test our faith. And I think the testing of faith is such an important topic because you cannot persevere through certain things if you just don't have faith. A lot of times people give up because they just don't have faith. And there's no way that you're going to be able to build that resilience, I think, without going through those particular tests. And this was one of the hardest concepts, I think, when I was walking in my faith to really start to wrap my mind around was that, there are going to be seasons where you are doing everything that you can possibly do. And you may feel like God is not showing up, or you may feel like there's no response, or there's not the traction that you're really looking for. But in reality, I also feel like when I look back, that was the season when I was isolated, when I was, completely by myself, when I stepped out on faith and moved out of Atlanta by myself to a new city and just isolated and completely stepped into a whole new space in my life. I think that's the first time in my life I saw and allowed God to start to fight my battles for me. And when that started to happen, I started to realize the power and authority that I had. And I didn't realize that prior to those tests and prior to that purification or prior to that season where he really, really put my back against the wall. And it was like, you either trust me or you don't. And when you get to that point, it's kind of like, dang, it ain't looking right. The reality of everything is looking real shaky now. It's looking a little shaky. But at the same time, you know what I mean? Like, I was able to learn that lesson by continuously falling into a space where I could really trust that God was going to fight this battle for me, And I think that when I think about my battles now in life, when I think about the things that I'm faced with or the opposition, I'm really at a space now where like, okay, we're going to war about it. Like, this is my life. This is what God said I'm supposed to do. This is what God called me to do. I'm not letting up easy. Like, we're going to have to go to war about it. And that's just what it's going to be. And that's the mentality I literally have now, because I think that, my mentality literally when I was in my isolation season, when I was going through real spiritual warfare for the first time in my life, because I ain't going to lie, I was like, I believe in God and things were going good. And he got me out of this situation that I was in. And I seen this whole beautiful side of God. And then it was like, okay, well, I'm taking you from that side to now I'm going to completely isolate you. I'm going to completely get you to a point where you need to surrender to me. And I'm going to give you so many revelations about yourself. And that was the point where I'm like, well, do I really believe in God? Because this doesn't feel good anymore. This doesn't feel like I decided to have faith and believe in something anymore. Like, that feeling started to get old really quick. And then what do you lean on? And then what happens? You know what I mean? And that was the place I started to have to tell myself, are you going to lay down and are you going to let the enemy take the rights to your life? Like, that's what I started asking myself. Girl, God has spoken a word over you. He has showed you what you are about to be doing. He has showed you what this next season is going to look like. You going to just let it go? You going to give up because your emotions feel a certain type of way, because you isolated today, because you feel lonely, because you this, because you that, because emotions are fleeting. But the promise about my life, the promise of who I'm supposed to be, what I'm called to be doing, that's not a fleeting emotion. So it started to get to the point where, I started looking at my battles like warfare. So, it's so crazy because I love a good war movie. Like, I am a war movie junkie. And I started to realize the tricks and the tactics of war. And if you think about it, when you're going into war, you're literally going into it with a battle, with a mentality that I'm either going to come out of here alive or dead. Like, that's it. So now I'm realizing, okay, life and death is in the power of my tongue, because I'm either going to come out of here speaking a certain way, moving a certain way, or I'm not. Or I'm not. And I started to realize that in war, your enemy is going to use traps and tricks to deceive you. And that's typically what's happening. Your emotions, that feeling of temptation, that feeling of like, I really can't rise above this, that is a trick being played on your mind. That is an emotion. You know what I'm saying? And when you get involved to that point where you're at the point of being tricked or deceived, you know, your discernment has to become heightened, because now I'm so vulnerable and I'm so desperate to see a change in my life from God that if anything or anyone comes my way that is trying to throw it off, I'm vulnerable. So I have to be aware of that at that point. I have to be understanding that you're in a vulnerable state. Your discernment now has to be heightened. Everything, everybody, every environment can't be around me, because now I need to be aware. And if I'm distracted, if I'm not consecrated at this point, I cannot make the right decisions. What happens in war if you make the wrong decision? Yeah, we know, right? You might get taken off. You might die. You may not make it back. You know? So am I ready to let somebody come into my territory that has my name on it with all of my stuff in the back and just come and take it? We're going to have to go down with a fight, my boy. Like, it's not going down like that, okay? So that's the point that I got to. And it's so interesting to me because the whole Bible always is talking about life and death. And I feel like it started to like hit me metaphorically, like life and death, the same thing like war, right? Like I'm going into this war and it's life or death, right? And so I started to realize that for real, like the enemy's plans are to kill, steal, and destroy. That's his plans when it comes to my life. So how do I operate now? Am I going to team up with somebody who wants to kill, steal, and destroy from me? Like, do you go hang out with your ops? No, like you don't. None of us are sitting here like, let me go hang out with my op. Yeah, this person really is trying to steal from me. He's going to take my credit card when I go in the bathroom. Let me go just lay it out on the table. You know, so I started to just have these revelations in my life. Like, look, every time that you're tempted to backtrack and go back to the things that you were doing, remember what you got, what has your name on it. Remember the level that you are supposed to be being called to. Remember what you asked for and you prayed for and you cried about. And then remember that this is going to kill, steal, or destroy it every single time. And so this was the mental battle I started to face, because it's like, okay, cool. It ain't that hard for me to make the decision on what team I'm trying to be. I'm trying to be on the winning team, the team of life, the team that's going to consistently make sure that I am living, I am prospering, I am protected, and I'm not encamped and taken down in my own territory, right? So, you know, I think the overall thing to me started to just become like, why would I give up my birthrights? Like, this was given to me. God knew me and placed me in my mother's womb. And he said, okay, I have a plan for you. And I'm going to just get here and start to act up and say, you know what? I'm going to give up my birthright. I'm going to give up everything that you have for me. Like, I don't know. To me, that just sounds so much crazier than I don't want to pursue this. I don't want to have the faith to believe it could happen. That just, I don't know. It started to just shift my whole perspective on everything. And I think I got to the point where when I started to be faced with opposition, guys, I'm being honest, even to this day, I'm really not willing to back down. Like, yeah, it's going to be a fight. And the fact that I understand it's going to be a fight it changes my mentality and tactics, because I understand that I am fighting at this point. I'm not, you know, I'm in warfare. Like, I'm not just being oppressed for no reason. I understand that there's a reason I'm being oppressed. And the reason I'm being oppressed is because I am trying to reach a new level. And just like we found out in the beginning scientifically, positivity, literally, there's something about it that will attract something negative to you. So when you have that knowledge and that wisdom, I feel like, how do you now strategically move? Are you just going to lay down, right? So it was a proactive decision to consistently choose faith in every trial, in every tribulation. And I ain't going to sit here and say that it was some days that I wasn't like, release me, send me back to the streets. I'm not going to sit here and say I didn't have those thoughts ever. But I came to my senses and I started to realize, you know, like, okay, that's not going to work. out for you in the end, in the best way. And you have to proactively just make the decision to have faith. Like, it is a proactive decision. It is really the baseline of really showing yourself how much you really believe, you know? And I would say the two tools that I use that really help me to fight off these thoughts, deal with these emotions, and really get back into the space, guys, where I completely just was like, okay, what am I going to do? It was always bottom line would come back to prayer and fasting. And, you know, I was fasting last year for so many months because I was so desperate to see a change in my life. And I think that was such a new thing for me. Like, I had never felt like, God, I need you so bad. I'm willing to give up every single thing in my life to be here, to see this come to fruition. And you guys, literally, like, you guys have seen my whole life change. Like, I can't make this up. So from marriage to, you know, marriage to business to my career, like, every single thing I was petitioning and praying for has come to pass. And I really believe it was because I was so willing in that season to step away from everything, not be consumed with anything, not be distracted, but really just lay it all down. And it was really important. And that season of being able to fast and just be alone for so long, it really heightened my discernment, which I was telling you guys is just so important to have. You know, it helped me to know who I needed to be around and how I needed to operate. Because everything, every environment, and everybody is not meant to be around as you are going through certain seasons, as you are elevating. You know, you hear it a million times, but everybody can't come. Everybody won't understand. Everybody is not going to be on the journey with you. And as much as that sucks, and that was a lot of shedding and heartbreak along the way that had to occur, but it's just the truth of the matter. Like, who you're called to be in that next season that you're walking into, everybody is not going to be okay with it. Everybody's not going to support it. And who gives a flying, you know, like, who cares? Like, let them be, wish them the best, and do you. It's okay. Life gets better. You'll be introduced to new people, new circles. God will provide for you. Trust me. Like, it doesn't matter, you know? And the last thing that I would say is that it gave me the ability to see what God really wanted for me and get a real revelation on how he viewed my life. And what that allowed me to do as an individual was fill in the gaps. So everywhere that I didn't see the vision of, like, what I was petitioning for, or the next level I needed to be at, or, you know, even though I'm in the middle of this warfare, even though I'm facing opposition right now, are there gaps that I'm missing? You know what I mean? And yeah, so those were the things that got me through. It was my perspective. It was my mentality. It was the testing. It was knowing God's character. And that would not have been developed. And I would not be sitting here today, guys, with all of the things that you guys have seen happen over the past 18 months, had I not just trusted and had faith and just said, this is going to work out. I don't know how it's going to work out, some way, somehow. I know I'm being beat down left, right, and center. And my reality is not the same as what I envision in my head. But I trust and I believe that in some way, shape, or form, we are going to persevere, you know. And I love the saying, you know, weapons will form, but they will not prosper. Because, baby, one thing about God, I ain't never lost a battle with him on my side. I'm just going to let y'all know that right now. So I really encourage you in this season, do not lay down. Do not lay down. Do not give up. Like, if you're on the verge of that, do not lay down. Like, it's not the time for that right now. You know, what God has promised you, what your territory is, the place with your name on it, do not lay down. Like, it's not the time for that. You got to go to warfare. You got to take it. It's yours. It belongs to you. And the worst thing you could do is just allow something or someone or an environment or a situation to come in and steal and rob you of everything on the other side of that. So be sure you guys join the Faith and Works community. The link is in the bio. Like, comment, subscribe. Y'all know the vibes. We're going to be back with another video sooner than later.